You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 312. So today on the podcast, we're joined by Charlie Hindley, who I met dressed as a wizard last time, and he's not dressed as a wizard this time. I spoke about Charlie and the Potter Trail a few episodes ago, actually, about the kind of inspiration and passion side. So I'm thrilled that you're joining us today to talk, well, all things really.
Ria, it's an absolute honor. Since we met one another, I've been catching up with many of your podcasts. I wonder what the neighbors must think of me. I've been outside rebuilding roofs on sheds, and you've been on full volume. So the entire street here on the Isle of Bute now know everything about you.
Your poor neighbours. Your poor neighbours. Well, it was great to meet you then, and the boys were completely captivated. Well, I actually put the boys aside. I was completely captivated. I love J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter anyway, so it was really, really cool to bring it all to life. So, I mean, can you start at the beginning? Can you tell us all about you and how you got into this? Because it's not, I guess, a normal career path for most people to say, what do you want? I mean, actually, my kids would say, I want to be a wizard, but it's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Isn't it extraordinary how things come and land with you in life? So I'm going to try and be as brief as I can, actually, because I could go on and on about so many things. But I can remember when I was very young and I went off to be a chorister in Cambridge. I went off to St. John's College School in Cambridge as a chorister when I was very little. And I don't advise anybody to send their 8-year-olds off to boarding school, I have to say. But one of the byproducts of being there was an awareness that rigorous discipline and real commitment to your craft works. And so I did 4 years, and we toured all over the world. We made lots and lots of albums, and it was a very elite environment. I didn't always feel that I really belonged there because I'd grown up in a sort of a rural part of Norfolk. And I was the first person in my family ever to have had that experience. I got a scholarship, and it all happened. And when I left there, I went on to another school where I discovered a love of theatre. And really, that was the thing that I felt I belonged in the theatre. And I left school quite young at 16. I moved out and I went and I got various different jobs for a number of years. And I auditioned for drama school on the advice of my extraordinary late mother, who more or less said to me, "You should go to drama school." And despite my protestations, I did go for an audition at a place called Ridgeway Studios down in Hertfordshire, which is not, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, an Ivy League drama school, but it was absolutely wonderful. And I met a man there who became my mentor, Adam Armstrong, and he helped me to become an actor. And from that moment, leaving there in the early 2000s, I wanted to travel as much as possible with my now very long-suffering wife, Mel, and to experience as much of the world as we possibly could together. And when we returned to the UK, I got in touch with Adam and said, listen, I've really enjoyed working with groups wherever I'd been. You know, we'd been in Southeast Asia and I'd done drama and improvisation workshops with children on the beach. And even though we couldn't speak one another's language, our interactions were so exciting. And it was wonderful, Ria. They were incredible. The most extraordinary. I remember one experience in Cambodia, just as an aside, where we were in the killing fields and there were these extraordinary children there. And I don't know if you've been there, but they have this incredible monolithic glass-fronted tower full of skulls of people who had been killed there by the Khmer Rouge. And these children full of joy and possibility and laughter. They had nothing. You know, they were scratching around there for clothes. And you can imagine where those clothes had come from. But we would play together and we would interact with each other. And I thought, oh, this is so galvanizing. I've got to do this. And I came back and I got in touch with Adam, and he got me an interview with a drama school in Newcastle, the Sage Academy of Performing Arts. And I started teaching drama there. And I wanted to do that forever. So I carried on doing that. I went on to teach at various different places. And my absolute passion was always interacting with the next generation of performers to help give them that same opportunity. And when you see that light bulb go on in young people, it's just incredibly galvanizing. So I kept up doing that. Traveled again, went to New Zealand and taught at a drama school there, came back to Scotland, where Mel is from, and we settled in Edinburgh. And it was then that I became friends with people who started the Potter Trail back in 2011. So the original research was undertaken by an extraordinary wizard whose name is Stu, who's still with us. And his incredible deep research into the journey of J.K. Rowling was really fascinating. And I would say to him and the others as well, if there was ever an opportunity for me to come and play, I would love to do that. And I actually only began working with the Potter Trail and delivering tours actively in 2017 when things really started to get a bit busier. And it's just been wonderful working with the Potter Trail. But here on the Isle of Bute, where I am now, I've got Bute Youth Theatre, which, as I've always said, is still my absolute passion. It's just a very small youth theatre. We've got 60 participants who come after school every week, and it's an absolute joy and a privilege to be in a room with young people. I love it. There's a real whirlwind whistle-stop tour there of what I've done.
I didn't know you'd been to so many places. It's amazing. So,
well, I've been very lucky.
I mean, yeah, I don't believe in luck. I think it's actually hard work. I think that's what it is most of the time. Wow. And obviously we met you on the Potter Trail, which has just exploded, hasn't it? You said with 2017 you became part of it, because Edinburgh is really the sort of birthplace of where J.K. Rowling started started everything Harry Potter and, you know,
Yes.
amazingness. I mean, how does it feel to be telling that story? Because obviously you get different groups of people all the time, but I imagine a lot of the content's very similar.
Yes, it is. It's extraordinary because I suppose having that theatrical background has given me an opportunity to recognize that every single audience is different. And when you have a Potter Trail tour group, so our maximum tour group size is 35, but generally speaking, we'll get somewhere between sort of 15 and 35. And it can be a real extraordinary group of people in front of you from all over the world in any given tour. And I think you have to try and listen to them, certainly in advance of the tour starting, find out a bit more about them and what they would like to experience. And you do tailor it to your audience in that regard each and every time, which is a wonderful thing to do, because I think, as you say, if you're doing the same thing often, it does have the potential to become mundane, I think. And I would say that every tour is different. But it's the same in theatre as well. You know, I listened to wonderful Alan Rickman speaking about acting a while ago, and he would be on stage for months at a time. And he would say that every single night when he went out, he would deliver a line that would get a response that he didn't anticipate.
Really?
Or that and he would deliver a line that normally, you know, brought the house down. And he said, you always have this thing as an actor when you're performing. And he described it as like a Geiger counter, constantly going on over here where the audience are. And you've got this interaction with you and potentially one other person on stage. And if a line doesn't land, you have to be sharp enough to be able to identify, right, that didn't, so I'm going to have to pick up the next one. And all of those skills that are inherent in being a theatrical performer, I employ on a day-to-day basis when I'm doing the tours. And it keeps me wonderfully fresh, I have to say. And you learn a lot about yourself all the time, because there are days. I mean, we were lucky, really. We had a lovely day. The weather was good.
It was.
Your children were wonderful and brilliant and really interactive, and I adored them both, Oscar and Charlie. I think they're great.
They'll be thrilled to hear that. They loved you very much. So
you're just great. I adore, and I really advocate for the children coming along. They're all wonderful. And, you know, it's often the children who are the most interactive on a tour. They're the brave ones who will answer questions, who have opinions, who want to find out more. And if you're, say 10 years old and you're standing there in a group of 30 people, you've got this hairy, middle-aged man in a graveyard shouting things at you, and you're still answering those questions, I think that's wonderful. And I do make sure that I tell them as well. I say, listen, you know, there'll be adults here who won't have the confidence to speak in this environment. So keep that going. And I don't know if that always lands, but I do hope it does.
I think as well, it was what's interesting with, I think, Harry Potter, and there's probably plenty of other stories and I can't think of the word, like, you know, Harry Potter, like Star Wars, like there's groups of people, is that, don't get me wrong, that my children were wildly engaged with it, but actually everybody on the group that we were in, and like from all over the world, I think there was a lady from Australia, Um, there were there was I'm trying to think who was there. There was
There was
quite
a
a
few couples, weren't there? There was a couple from LA.
yes,
They were a lovely couple. Incredible. I often say this about people from LA, but they always are so incredibly well turned. The ones that come on the tour, incredibly well turned out, excellent teeth. I make that joke on the tour, but it's true.
they
I
did
don't know
have.
what the Californians do, but hey, I need some of that. But yes, we did. It was a broad range of people, wasn't it?
And everybody was, everyone was having their pictures taken, everyone was picking up the bits of sticks to be ones. It's kind of just amazing that everyone kind of comes out of themselves in ways that if you were just doing a tour around Edinburgh looking at buildings, people would have just been silent, whereas people get involved and want to know more. It's a really bizarre but brilliant experience, actually, when everyone's kind of excited about what's going on.
Oh, I think, yeah. I mean, we're very lucky that it does lend itself to it, doesn't it? That it's a real vehicle for fun.
Mm.
Uh, but I would also say, perhaps, if you're leading something like that, that commitment that you have, the number one thing in every single tour for me is passion.
Mhm.
You have to have passion, and you have to deliver it with passion. And in theatre, and this is all very pretentious, and forgive me, but we talk about Doctor Theatre often. You could be feeling awful, absolutely dreadful. Something catastrophic could have just happened, but you have to deliver. That's your responsibility. And the second you walk around a corner and you're being seen by people, you have to have that impact. You have to be ready, and you have to have passion. I think I've been very fortunate. I know you don't believe in luck necessarily. Perhaps it is rigorous training over the years that's now entrenched in my being, that I'm able to turn that on. And it might well be after two or three of those and then a performance at the festival in the evening on stage that I'm a bit of a husk in the evening. But the satisfaction that you get from that it's real. And I find it in teaching as well. You can have people in schools who are technically brilliant teachers. And in fact, if you were in HR and you were looking at CVs, for example, and you're having to filter through these 300 people who want this job in this very prestigious school, whatever it might be, lots of those individuals might get through HR because they tick all those boxes. But you put them in front of a community of young people, and they are not the real deal. And
Mm.
kids read it instantly. And I would say that there's a part of us as adults as well that's the same. You know, if that person in front of you is authentic and genuine and passionate, you just know.
Mm.
And yes, so I think that I try to have that on every tour, and I feel like I do. But I do it in everything I do professionally, and all the time, and with the children here on the island as well. Because if you're not inspiring people, if you're not trying to make a difference in your life, what are you doing?
Oh, completely. But actually, I think this, well, I know that this does also translate so well to business. When you go to any big show, like a big trade show or a big
Mm,
show, and you walk around the stands, and there's some people there who are so excited about their product and they're genuinely happy to see you. Whether or not you buy something is actually incidental. They just want to talk to you and learn about you. And there's other people that are there, chewing their nails or on their phone.
mm,
And
mm.
you think, I know who's going to do well here. And actually, I also know who's going to, whatever the sales are, one person is going to have taken a lot from this and can build and develop and grow. And the other person hasn't.
Mm.
And and it is that experience. It's the people that then go away and say, "Oh, I saw such and such a stand. They were amazing." It's the marketing of it, but it is that genuine passion and being able to put that life to one side, like put life's challenges to one side.
How
And
often, Ria, sorry to interrupt, but how often are you tempted to offer that feedback to people
a
who
lot.
who are on the other end of the spectrum, who are perhaps not passionate and open?
A lot, a lot. I think you just get that vibe, don't you? You can see it with people. And I always, because sometimes I do work with a few shows, and you sort of
Mm.
sometimes hear the feedback from people who have had stands there. And if some people say, "Oh, it was a brilliant show. I met this person, I did this," and you're like, amazing. And it's those people because when you walk round, they're looking and they're engaging. They're not kind of like jumping on people, but they're tidying the stand, they're putting on their best show, and other people are miserable at the back, and they're the ones that say, "Oh, it was a rubbish
Mm.
show," and you say, "I can tell you why. I
Mm.
can tell you why, because you didn't bring everything to it, and you might have been tired, and you might have felt a bit ill, but that's that only interaction that person might ever have with you in your company, and that's what you left them with.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? It staggers me, I have to say. I don't want to speak too much about Adam, but I do remember Adam Armstrong, my mentor, saying to me, Charlie, he runs a wonderful training development company in London, actually, but he said to me, Charlie, psychologists suggest that people will have pegged you, compartmentalized you in 6 seconds. You
They will.
have to, its impact. When you walk into that space, it's about presence. It's about impact. That opinion may change, but the reality is, if you're walking around a show like that, are you going to stay for longer than 6 seconds? If you don't know that individual and there's half a dozen others along that road that you potentially could, these sorts of things are absolutely critical.
Mhm.
And I know that, in terms of communication, that physical communication is critical. So much of what we do is what we're doing physically. Was it, I think it was Albert Mehrabian back in the 60s who did a study on communication. You probably know all about this because you're such a specialist. And I'm so sorry if I,
No, 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 no. Go, go, go. Tell
well,
me.
Mehrabian talks about communication, and it was quite, it's contrived exercise. He interviewed lots of people, hundreds of people, and there were all sorts of things, I think, happening in California in the 60s. So we might take a little bit with a pinch of salt. But he recommended, or he suggested, that 7% of our communication are the words that we're saying. Only 7%. And that I think 38% is our tone of voice. And then the rest is what we're doing physically. So what's that? That's 55% of what we're doing is physical, and our tone of voice. This is huge, absolutely huge. And this is another reason. And I find this all the time when people come to me and they say, oh, I had this conversation with somebody and they said this and I said that. This type of secondhand information is a concern, because you are getting how that person is feeling in the moment when they're speaking to you, and they're, imparting what happened in a further conversation. If you really want to be part of the action, you've got to be there. You've got to see it. You have to be in the, and it's the same. I do a lot of improv comedy. I perform an awful lot of improv, which is a wonderful form of kind of grassroots theatre movement, which is really exploding. And when people show me videos of the shows, they're nothing like the experience of being on stage in a theatre, because you've got to see it and feel it and smell it. The senses have got to be there. It has to be live. It has to be real. And that's all part of the communication element as well. And this is why I think actually speaking to you and seeing you, at least this much of you, is really good, because we don't always get that opportunity as well. With so many emails, so many quick WhatsApps. The tone can be misread because you're arriving at it with all your baggage from the day. All of these sorts of things. My goodness me, more real interaction would be so much better for the world, I think.
Completely. And actually, that brings me to a point about, the COVID,
Mm.
when no one saw anybody. And it's actually taken quite a long time. I don't think we're there yet with people. Initially, I think people were really excited to get out. Then they were terrified to get out. And then it was, oh, we'll just do it online. We'll just do it on Zoom. We'll just do this. We'll do, online events. And as you say, it's the whole vibe is different. And the communication, the contacts you make, the people you meet it's a different animal. If you're sat in a room with somebody versus if you've got an online conference going on, it's not the same at all, is it?
No, it isn't. And you see it actually. You see it a lot, and people, when you're having meetings with people, important meetings, and that they're looking at another screen as well, and dealing with things. Now, I'm not saying they don't have to do those things, of course, and you can assert that perhaps they're not prioritizing things correctly. All of these things can be level, but what it leaves you with as a byproduct of that meeting is you're not particularly satisfied. Actually, you're not 100% sure if your message got through. And actually, you're going to have another follow-up as a consequence, because that needs to happen. So you're actually losing more time, which can be hugely precious.
Mhm.
That said, there are benefits. It must be said, I started a youth theatre on Zoom during lockdown,
Did you
which
really?
we called it Zoom Youth Theatre, which was, because we're geniuses with words. And I remember three pupils came who I knew, who I taught face to face in their lives. One had suddenly become a mid-teenager, and I'd been working with her since she was 6. She marched into the studio with me all those years ago and said that she wanted to perform Shakespeare, and she was and still is phenomenal. She's very, very close to going to a top drama school now, and the world of theatre will be lucky to have her. So she was one. A friend of a friend whose daughter I didn't know, she joined, and a boy called William, who I taught face to face for a number of years, he joined as well. And I said, listen, gang, people are telling us we can't do this, but we're going to do it. Not only are we going to learn the skills inherent in being part of a wider theatrical community, we're going to produce a piece of theatre. I'm going to apply to have this performed at the National Festival of Youth Theatre. And if we get that opportunity, we will go and perform that piece of theatre. And people said, and they still say, you can't do these things. But we did it, and we were accepted, and they went and performed. And I must tell you, the first time they rehearsed on a stage together was the technical dress rehearsal for that festival show. They performed that piece, and they were staggering, brilliant, wonderful. They brought the house down. They deservedly got their standing ovation. I wept in the tech box because I am just all emotion, really. And do you know what? They had the opportunity. So it is possible to make things happen in that environment. And I suppose I'm sort of contradicting myself by telling both those sort of stories. But it's because they were present when they were in those sessions, when we were together on camera. You could see it. And they wanted to develop. And I wanted to learn about that medium more as well. And I realized then that actually it can be done. And I do teach still. I still have international students. A lot of them are homeschooled, who I teach through Zoom, and they're able to do, you know, all of their accredited exams and so on. So it has been wonderful in that regard. I imagine Skype are a bit cheesed off because we all use Zoom now. And before lockdown, it was all Skype, wasn't it?
It was, and it's become one of those words, you know, rather than, oh, I'll send you, you know, a link to a online video conferencing service. I'll Zoom you. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Amazing. They must be delighted.
Absolutely, they've done a good job.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was quite interesting about the Potter Trail was that it's free.
Hmm.
Do you feel that that puts a lot more pressure on you? Because, I mean, obviously you'll explain how it all works, but do you feel that that puts more pressure on you to deliver because your income depends on your delivery rather than people taking a chance on you? Because often people say, oh, when it's free, people don't pay attention. There's a much better way of saying that. But I was actually on LinkedIn, I think it was yesterday, and Simon Squibb, who's amazing,
Oh, yeah.
he does his content for free, and it's got the most superb traction. And he was having this debate about when people pay, they pay attention. That's the phrase. Got there in the end. And he does it the other way, and he's going, no, people are paying attention, and this is why I've done it. But it's not conventional. It's not a conventional way of doing things.
No, it certainly isn't. I think that in theatre, hundreds of years ago, when you go back to things like Comédie de l'Art and so on, these were street performers who would arrive in a town, they would get to know people, and they would perform a piece that they essentially improvised, but it was based on the experiences that they had had that day, and they would then put the hat round and people would put money in if they wanted to. And of course, over the years, several things have emerged. And the free walking tour model, although it is dying across the world, in favor of people, companies, quite large companies often saying, well, look, if we just charge this much, then we can, you know, we can pay the people who deliver those tours an hourly rate. And that's, you know, we grow our business. So it's risky in the sense, particularly in the days before we took bookings in advance of the tour. So people, you know, they have to go to the website now in order to get a place on the free tour, which carries its own risk as well. But we could turn up and you wouldn't know how many people were going to be there. And in fact, that was exciting because sometimes you would end up perhaps even with one individual. And if you had one individual who was traveling alone, then your attitude, well, my attitude would always be, I'm going to make sure that person has the greatest 90 minutes they've had all day. We're just going to give it everything we've got. But you just sort of say to people that there shouldn't be barriers to these experiences. Edinburgh is a very expensive place to travel to, as are most capital cities now. We know more broadly what's going on financially for the world. A lot of people who love the story of Harry Potter, they recognize how challenging things can be for different people from different worlds. And that's one of the things they love about the story.
Mhm.
So let's give them that experience. And if they can afford to pay well, they will. And if they can't, that's okay. That's absolutely fine, actually. Now, most people do tend to put in a certain amount. And if it got to the point where we weren't earning well enough, then we'd have to think about it again, perhaps. And that's me being brutally honest. But by and large, it works fine. It works absolutely fine. And it just means that people will have a wonderful experience. Some days as a guide, you do incredibly well, other days not as well, but the experience is always wonderful and life affirming. And I do the same thing in theatre as well when I go and perform at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So I've done what's known as the paid fringe a number of times with a number of different shows. And there are sort of a big four venues. They're described as the big four. And most people who've been to the festival will recognize these venues. Their branding is everywhere. They have all of the elite venues. But I've often done what's known as the free fringe because it's precisely the same situation. You know, not everybody knows the name of our improv comedy troupe, Men with Coconuts, which is an arbitrary name. It should be pointed out. And why should they pay £15 to see an improv troupe they've never heard of? We don't have particularly brilliant online content. We don't have, a TikTok channel. We do musical improvised comedy. So we're still building audiences all these years down the line. We've been very lucky. We've toured all over the world. We've won awards. We know we're good at what we do, but not everybody knows that. And so don't go charging people £15 because what it will mean is you'll get smaller audiences of people who have probably seen you before all those years ago when you were on the free fringe, and you're not going to build a new audience off the back of that. So we still do it. And I stand on stage and I say, listen, it is a genuine honor that you've come to see us tonight. You could have done anything at 6:15. You know, we would love it if you're able to support the show. I mean, it genuinely costs thousands of pounds to put on any show, but when you've got a community of performers on stage, musicians, tech, it costs money, and people will pay when when they've had a good experience. So it's on you. If you give them a good experience, they will pay for it.
It's actually quite a genius marketing move as well, isn't it? Because obviously when we talk about marketing, we talk about increasing our reach, getting in front of more people. And by kind of reversing the paid model, you're doing that as well.
Yeah, you are. And, when we moved to the Isle of Bute, by chance, I met somebody who went to university who set up one of the big four at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And when they got to university, that individual said their objective was to leave university with more money than they had when they arrived. And the objective was to make money off out of the festival. And there will always be individuals at the top table without whom they can't facilitate a glorious, glamorous, biggest arts festival of the world. There is that to be said for it. But there is also a reality, and the reality is there are thousands of genius performers who will never be able to afford to go to the biggest performing arts festival in the world unless they do the free fringe, which they potentially don't even know anything about, because the cost is staggering. One of my former pupils came up with his show from Newcastle, and they did brilliantly. Actually, they were longlisted for one of the best newcomers. Rolling Stone, big article about them.
Wow.
And they came up and they said their biggest expense was their accommodation. They were there for 3 weeks, and I think they had to find nearly £8,000 for their digs for the 3 weeks. This is a lot of money. And we all know, I mean, inherently, we know that, being a performer, being an artist doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a lot of money. And there's always concerns for young people as they grow up, when you sit down with your children and you say to your kids, what do you want to be? If they say they want to be an actor, people panic a great deal. They really do. When I was little, my dad said to me, what do you want to be, Charlie? And I said, well, I'd like to be an actor. He said, no, it's pronounced doctor, actually.
Oh, God.
So, but his fear is similar, not to go on a complete tangent, as it is with all parents, because you just want your young people as they grow up, you want your kids to succeed. And what that looks like really is they do need to put bread on the table. And that was the point that he was making. He said, if you're going to do it, then you must be all in. you have to every day when you wake up, what are you doing to increase your potential of earning? How are you going to make sure you provide for yourself and your family? And these were sort of 1980s, early 90s masculine traits, of course, but they are true. And this is the point that I make as well. Going to the free model on anything, you better be brilliant at what you do, because success, financial success in that market, it is a byproduct of you being good.
Yeah,
Because there's no point in just believing in the ethics of it, or the morality of it even. You've got to be good. And that's absolutely crucial.
completely. Another thing that I noticed when you were doing the Potter Trail is at the end of it, you were very, very positive about leaving reviews, which I have done.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you.
But it was brilliant. We had a lovely time. What part do you think reviews plays in a business like yours, or business generally? Because I think it's one of these things that people often forget, but they
Yeah.
don't realize the potential impact.
Well, from the perspective of the small business like ours, it is it underlines to people who again don't know much about you what the quality of the experience is, and that reads to others globally. If they're planning a trip to Edinburgh and they're looking perhaps on TripAdvisor or other review handles, they will make decisions based on what they see there. But also, I think it's about feedback, isn't it? It's about looking at what the real experience of people is and developing what you deliver based on that feedback. Because in truth, you would be, one can be wrong about the work and what they think is happening and how they believe it to be landing. But that is genuine feedback. You could have left that under an anonymous name. You could have left it, and been wholly negative about the entire experience. All of that's still valuable. That's still genuine feedback from somebody. And you have to be able to wear that feedback as well. Because I have had, I remember I got a 3-star review. I think it's perhaps the only one I got, but it was a 3-star review. And I actually wrote to the individual off the back of it and tried to find out just a little bit more about what their feelings were around that. Because you have to be prepared to be flexible and to learn more about what you're doing and how that's landing with as many people as possible. And of course, in theatre, you live and die by those reviews if they're from reputable places. Everybody wants to get reviews at Edinburgh. They want them from the Scotsman, they want them from the List and 3 Weeks, the bigger names, because there are many other review guides out there now as well. And you're looking for that because those people, they know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
And when it comes to experiences of the public also know what they enjoy, and you have to make sure you're continuing to deliver something that they enjoy. So I think that is crucial. Reviews are crucial. And I suppose we're now also moving into a time with AI where potentially you could generate lots of those. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
there have been
actually,
cases where some of these review sites can identify that they're fake reviews that are going up. So people said, "Oh, we had the most amazing service," or "Oh, it came in no time," and they've gone, "Hang on a minute, these aren't legit," which is brilliant because, as you say, reviews lose all value if they aren't genuine.
no, they do. That word genuine is a real touchstone for me my whole life, and I can tell, and the entire street, of course, now can tell from your podcast that that's the same for you. It's so crucial, and I think savvy travelers going place to place. Hopefully, they're able to see that as well, and I'm really pleased to know there are ways of identifying that which has been done through AI as well, because when it comes to walking tours, I suppose it's vital, isn't it?
Yes, because there's obviously somewhere like Edinburgh or other cities, there's lots of stuff you can do. So
Mm.
you want to make sure that you're spending your time and your money potentially wisely, getting the right ones, don't you? But it's like if you buy a product as well. If you're trying to decide which water bottle to buy, I said this because I'm looking at my water bottle now. I go onto Amazon and I read all the reviews of people go, "Oh, it disintegrated when I put water in it," or because you want to spend your money and your time well, don't you?
You do, and you'll know this with 2 boys of your own. I've got my son. I can't believe how many water bottles he gets through.
Oh, they just shed stuff at school. They've gone
Mm,
for some forest school thing today. We've lost a jacket.
mm.
Um, apparently got binned. I don't know how that happened, but water bottles, we lose those regularly, or then we'll come home with like 6. Not us,
Oh,
but we'll just
no.
clear out a tray. And you think,
No, it's
brilliant.
extraordinary. There's a room somewhere with water bottles.
Yeah.
It's some extraordinary collector somewhere, potentially on the Isle of Bute. It's the kind of thing that might happen here. You know, you might find that some sort of hermit somewhere with a room full of water bottles and children weeping outside somewhere. I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. No, these things do happen. And yes, so reviews, yeah. What's the upshot? They're absolutely critical. And interaction as well that goes beyond that, giving people more than is expected, I
Mhm.
think, is really important, and that comes through in reviews as well. I think you get that that feedback. It's great, and it does because it really motivates you. I think I'm what psychologists refer to as an externally referenced individual. I
I love that.
do. I know it's amazing. It essentially boils down to needing an audience, I think, or needing that validation that you get from an audience. I
Useful in your
suspect
line
that's
of
true.
work, though. If you didn't need an audience, it would be a strange line of work to go into.
Yeah, I think so. But that comes back to passion again, doesn't it? It comes back to that desire. Not only do you want, are you doing this, you need it. You want to do it. It's
Mm.
absolutely vital. I was watching the final of Strictly last year, which is a phenomenal show. And one of the judges was giving feedback to one of the individuals who was dancing on the last night, and they had made an error in that first dance, and they were receiving their feedback in front of however many million people are watching them. And you could see they were really trying to hold back tears in that moment because they were so disappointed with the error that they had made. And this judge said, listen, you come on here every week and you give it everything. And he said, people come on this show and they say they're going to give it everything, but they don't really. You know, they try hard, they turn up to training, they give it a lot, but they don't give it everything. You do. And I know that the people at home are going to see that. And so it doesn't matter what scores we give you now, because the most important thing is that you give everything of yourself. That's critical. And when you get that good interaction with tours, with shows in a youth theatre setting, when you get that kind of really genuine, authentic, passionate delivery, it lifts things and people want to come back. And you want to see them as well because you know that they're enjoying the experience and they are galvanizing you as well. It's a wonderful thing, and I know it doesn't always happen, and I know that there are things in life where it's very difficult to do that. But if you know if you're finding that in your work, and you're feeling like you know it's robotic or mundane or monotonous, well then you must change your work because there is something for you out there that will light that fire.
We really only do get one go round, don't we? And I think when things happen in your life and you think, "Oh my god, it actually really is quite short and stuff happens,"
Mm.
why would you waste it doing something that you aren't prepared to show up and give 100% to?
Do you know, that's so true. And I think perhaps it comes out of these extraordinary moments as well. And, you know, it's an odd turn for the conversation to take, but when I went off to boarding school when I was 8, that abandonment, that initial kind of severing of those very strong ties that you have with your parents, was desperately emotional. And I can remember I immediately, well, I say immediately, it took all of us little boys there as choristers, a long time to get to grips with it and to understand why we'd been put in that situation. But it did also give you, you couldn't find comfort in a huge amount, emotional comfort. So what you would do is you found it in other things. So what I had is a little transistor radio, and I had these headphones, very clunky things, and the batteries would always run out in the radio. But at night I would listen to the radio, and I would try and find a channel. And it would come in and out, and we all remember what that used to be like. And I remember that it was BBC Radio 5, I think it was, I was listening to, and you would listen to people interacting with each other. And I suppose what I was really listening to often would be political conversations happening between people, late night things that young children perhaps shouldn't listen to as well. And I remember that just the people that seemed to really get through in those dark nights underneath the covers when there were 11 other boys in there who were all sort of with their own fears and worries and concerns and loss. Those voices that came through were the voices of warmth sometimes, and the voices that seemed to be genuine and authentic. And I can't remember who those people were, but I do remember that they made me feel great. And that's the same. You know, you potentially couldn't remember everything that was said on the Potter Trail, but hopefully you will remember how it made you feel. And people carry that. Emotion, it's very important. It's almost more important now, I think, than ever, how we can make one another feel. And that's really important. And, you know, and in life, you know, I've sat and I've watched some dearly loved people pass away in front of me. You know, my mother from cancer in 2012, then in 2014, I sat with my brother as he passed away. And there were so many. And one of the things my mum said to me 3 days before she did die, and it was one of the last lucid things I can remember happening, she looked at me and she said, "Charlie, be brave." And I said that I would, and she said, "I know you would." She meant within the context of the situation. But that line, "be brave," made me really think about things. And it made me say to myself, you know, I will not waste time. I will do things. I will make things happen. Because these extraordinary people that we lose, who we know don't deserve to go early, but sadly who often do, the great people of the world, they underline that we can't waste time, really. We mustn't. What do we? And as I said at the beginning, if we're not making a difference, if we're not passionate and energetic about what we do, then why are we here? Let's do it.
I mean, there's no better point to end, I don't think. I feel quite emotional, actually. I mean, I think you're fabulous, and I know everybody that listens to this will. So can you tell us all the places we can find out all about you, all about the Potter Trail, all about what you do online?
Well, it's been genuinely, I want to say again, just an extraordinary honor. I am definitely a huge convert. I listen to all of your stuff, and I shall continue to do so.
Thank you.
Well, no, I mean it. I really do. I am at Charles Hindley on Instagram. And as I've alluded to in this conversation already, I'm not on there all the time, but I intend to be on there far more. So yes, I'd love to hear from you. And do drop me a DM if this was something that interests you, anything about it at all. We talked about feedback. I'd love to hear it. We are the Potter Trail, pottertrail.com. You can find us. Come and see us in Edinburgh. We'd love to take you on a
Do
tour.
go and see him.
And if you would, you know, if you want to come and see me doing improvised comedy, Men with Coconuts, we are at Men with Coconuts, and of course the Youth Theatre. Why wouldn't you want to follow Butte Youth Theatre? We are at Butte Drama Studio here on the island as well. And if you haven't been to the Isle of Butte, final great big shout for the Isle of Butte. We've been here for 3 years. It's a small island off the west coast of Scotland. You must see it. It's wonderful up here.
Thank you so, so much for joining me today. It's been so lovely to talk to you, as always.
Ria, you're brilliant. Thank you so much for doing what you do.